Hi, everybody. This is Simone Tellini here with Dr. Bobby Gallagher. We're here from POAC, Autism Services, and hoping that you can join us today live. We're here now, and we're talking to you on a new program that we have called Questions for the BCBA. And this is something we started just a couple of weeks ago in response to all the measures and things that are happening around COVID-19. And our plan for this was to have Bobby graciously is donating her time to speak to parents and educators and really anybody that has questions or concerns about a child or a student, whether it's something that's going on now as a result of being home because of COVID, or even if it's something that's been ongoing. And we started this about 2 weeks ago on a different platform, and we're trying to reach more people. So we took this to Facebook Live, and our plan for today is to be with you for about a half an hour, more or less. And Bobby has a planned presentation that we will share with you, but we really do want you to feel free to comment in the comment section and ask questions. If we're not covering some of the things and issues that you're having, please bring it up, comment about it, and let us know, some things that you're interested in hearing about. And we can either address those here as questions now or possibly in a future session. Okay, so figure we're going to present for about 20 minutes or so. We can take 10 minutes after that to answer questions, or we'll see how it goes since this is our first one on Facebook Live. So without further ado, Bobby Gallagher.
Thank you. Hi, Simone. Thanks so much. So hi, everybody. I'm hoping that maybe we'll be able to help you a little bit with some of the things that are going on. But some of the concerns that have come across have really been just about how to explain all that's happening or how to decrease some of the anxiety of our children about what's happening. And so I really got this great idea from a friend of mine, another BCBA. It works with younger children frequently. And so she said to me that one of the ways to kind of explain this new phenomenon of having to stay home was to use bears that hibernate and kind of the story around bears and how they're home and they're safe and they're with their mom and dad and they have everything that they need, and that we're just going to be bears for a little while and we're all going to hibernate and hope that that will help them to better understand why they're home and why they can't go out or why they're not going to school, and that hopefully when the spring comes or the summer comes and all will be well, they'll have everything and they'll be able to then start back out just like bears would do that. So I think that's a great way to explain this kind of lockdown that we have here in New Jersey for some of our children. And then another one that she gave me was this idea about how do we explain the spread of COVID-19 to some of our children or other individuals. And it was to use this glitter idea. So if you took glitter and you put it outside and you put it on a table and the wind came and it blew the glitter, it would blow it all over. And eventually by the end of the day or the end of a week, you would probably find glitter in places that you had I couldn't even imagine that it was there. And it went all over. But if you took that same pile of glitter and you put it inside of your house and you just put it on your table, certainly moving past it would create some wind or air movement, but it's definitely not going to spread as far. And certainly I'm sure everybody doesn't want glitter all over their house, but just to give that explanation as to why that might be a great way to explain how this can spread through the air or around, and why we then need to wash our hands, and the same with the glitter. If you wash your hands and you get it off, and how well you have to wash in order to do that. So I thought those were both really great ideas for explaining this whole situation to younger children, or for those who just can't kind of grasp a virus and what that means, especially a virus or something that's not visible to all of us. So those were some of the things that came past. And then the other thing that's been coming to us from so many families is just, how do I even get started with this, working with my child at home? And I think the number one challenge that many of us have is not being this person in our child's life. So in the past, Right. I never really appreciated when somebody would say, well, parents don't put any demands on their child when they're home, or, the child doesn't have to. It's not that we don't put demands on our children. It's that the demands are usually very different from the demands that they get at school. So we're certainly putting demands on them, and often demands that they don't even want to, right? Want to do. So going to bed is a demand. Some of our children don't like to have their teeth brushed. They don't like to eat certain foods. They don't want to take a bath. All of these things that we're putting on them certainly are demands, but they're not the same demands. So over time, your child is doing all of those things, right? They're going to bed when you tell them to. They're eating foods maybe that you had to really work hard to get them to eat. They're doing a lot of things. You've built a level of trust to say, I'm going to do these things with you, and then, and then your world is going to be fine, and you've built this. Now we've almost broken that trust. And what I mean is, now you're asking me to do things you haven't asked me to do before. And so for children on the spectrum, often we've built this trust up, or we've built this life up, and we're throwing them all for a really big loop in all of this. Now we're saying we have to be your teacher too. And I gave an example years ago with my own son, Austin, in that he worked with someone who I would say he would have preferred to be with over me. He really adored her quite a bit, and they had a beautiful relationship together, but she was leaving. Staff, she was leaving, and she was getting married. And so she had to train new staff in the behavior intervention plan that was developed for him. Well, in that, when she was training it to this level of perfection that she herself had not adhered to because over time, like any good behavior plan should, it faded. It started to fade to more natural language. It started to fade to less use of the visual system. It just started to fade to a more natural interaction with him, which is, exactly what we would hope would happen. But when she had to train somebody new in it, she had to train them to this, level of perfection of how it was originally developed. And my son did not take to that very well at all, and actually got up and aggressed towards this woman. And it was almost to say, this is not you, and I don't know who you think you are right now, but you don't do this, right? And really scared her quite a bit. So but that's one of the things that I think our children are feeling. It's just this sense of anxiety over, wait a minute, you're not this person. The person who asks me these types of questions doesn't even look like you, and they're not usually in this setting. And all of these things are being, are happening to me. So what I would say is, although we're probably 2 weeks out now, when you want to, if anybody's hasn't been successful yet, or really coming up against a lot of, resistance to being able to work with you, that we should maybe back up a second and just say, look, let's come up with a plan. And, and let's come up with a plan, in case this ever happens again, like knock on wood, nothing, but, the very first day, just have lunch together, maybe even pack a lunch in the lunchbox so that we're getting used to still using the lunchbox kind of thing. Pack a lunch and eat lunch together. That's it. Nothing else. The next day we're going to have lunch and maybe look at a book. But just try to incrementally increase these things that they did at school, but starting with an activity that I do at home. I do eat lunch at home, but maybe I don't eat it out of my lunchbox. So that in of itself is like one first new thing. And we're just going to kind of keep introducing it until we can incrementally get them to do this. And I would highly recommend, write out what you think that plan should be. And of course, it's going to change depending on your child, right? On your particular child. But write it out. And then the biggest thing that we say is, don't push it if it's going well, right? And I'm the person who does this the most. I think, oh, good, I'm on a roll. I'm doing this so well. Let me just ask them one more thing, or let me just try one more thing. And it's always that one more thing that just blows the whole thing. And it was like, if I had just stopped 5 seconds ago, we all would have been fine. And I think that's a problem that we all have, is just pushing it. So if we write it out and stick to what we're going to do, then we have a tendency to maybe keep to that. the other thing is if you get to say day 4 and now you're presenting a worksheet or you're doing something, I would say, and you see behavior challenges happening, but you didn't see them on day 3, go back to day 3. Go back to what you did on day 3 and stick with it for a little while, and then come to day 4 and kind of build it up, right? And move it forward. But don't kind of move forward if you think that it's not something, right? It's not working out. Don't keep going just because you wrote it out, right? Always go back to what worked before. And we mentioned that when we were using in the other format one day, when somebody was talking about toilet training, having a child regressed during toilet training, or has regressed back to, wetting and doing some things. And again, we have to look at whether or not this is making them nervous, making what's happening, why might they regress, and some things. But go back to the last toilet training activity or schedule that worked. What's the last thing you did before the child became completely independent at toilet training? And that may be where we have to go back to, just try and, take it back one step to see what's going on.
Right. And it sounds like too, when you're creating the schedule or you're creating what it is that you're going to do, instead of starting with, these are all my work activities and I'm going to put some rest breaks in between, you kind of flip it and say,
Yes.
it's a day, these are all my rest activities, and here's some
Right.
work breaks, sort of, to
Absolutely.
put in. So you're keeping more reinforcement and sliding
Yes.
the work in a little at a time and building over
Right.
time.
Right. That's exactly it. Right. So we want to keep our day to as typically as what it would have been. And I know that for some of us, maybe our children are a little bit more on, the media, their video gaming or on the computer or on iPad or whatever, a little bit more maybe than we want them to be. But at the same time, if that's what they do when they come home from school until dinner, if that's what they did from dinner until bedtime, to now suddenly be like, okay, you can't have that. And if you could just treat it like Saturday, if you wanted to turn any other Saturday into a school day, how would you do that? Right? You're not going to just suddenly say, hey, it's a school day, so jump over here and start doing your work. You would incrementally start to increase the amount of time that you want somebody to engage in these behaviors, right? So another thing might also be, for some of our children, this unexpectedness of this virus, the unexpectedness of you asking them to engage in work or to do anything. We might want to set some conditions under which your child knows, I'm going to have to do some school activities now, or I'm not going to have to do some school activities. And so maybe you have a shirt that's just your teacher shirt. Right? Maybe you just have something that says, when I'm wearing this orange shirt or whatever it is, something unusual, this is the only time I'm really going to ask you any questions, because now that you've become this uncertain person, this person that I'm never quite sure why you're suddenly asking me questions or asking me to schoolwork that you've never asked me to do before. How do I know you're not going to do it at 2:15, at 1:25, at 5 o'clock at night? How do I know? Well, maybe if we set that condition very specifically for some of our children to understand that it's only when I'm wearing this shirt that I'm ever going to ask you to do schoolwork. And when I don't have this shirt on, that means this is the home environment and the home setting, just like it is all of the other times. And that might help a lot for some of our kids, just to not be so on edge, and really maybe not even kind of want to start to see you, like, oh no, here she comes, or here he comes. So that might be a big one too. And as we said, if you're getting that resistance or that avoidance, kind of take it back a step or whatever. But the other one was really looking at homeschooling. Again, I know you're not homeschooling. We're trying to get through this, but we found some of the research to say that elementary levels children really only are at school 1 to 2 hours a day. And then I believe it was, and I don't, middle school children was between 2 and 3 or 4, and then high school was about 4 hours. So if we're asking children to do 2 hours a day, maybe we're looking at 15-minute increments across the day, right? And not just trying to get everything done and over with. And I know that this is probably a bigger problem for our parents who have to work. That's another one too, is that some of our parents, although they weren't stay-at-home parents to begin with, now they're home, but they're home and being told that they have to be online like this. They have to be working. They have to be engaged. They have to be, getting some work done. And then they're also being told that they have to educate their child. And they're like, wait a minute, my boss says I have to be at work from 9 to 5, right? Online, talking to people and still engaging in the same activities I engaged in before. Where am I supposed to get this in? The only time I can is in that same time frame that I used to do homework with them, or in that same time frame that I used to do. So maybe it's a 15-minute session before you go to work, and then maybe it's a 15-minute session during a lunch break, and then maybe you have 2 more 15-minute sessions after work or something. But again, kind of really giving an indication, and the same use of conditions. If you want your child to understand when you're at work, then you may have on a particular outfit or particular clothing that indicates to them, they're at work now, and it's not gonna, not only am I not going to be asked to do things, I might even be asked to leave them alone, and to go somewhere else. But trying to give them some of those visual conditions that will help them to better understand what's happening.
Yeah, I think that's really helpful. Those visual cues, I think, are really super important for our kids. And I just want to mention at this point, again, if anybody has just joined us, please feel free to type in a comment or a question if you have any issues that you want us to talk about. And I'm muting my mic because there's some loud work going on right outside my window of all time. So I hope that's not making a problem for anybody. But again, please, if you have a question, we're going to continue. But if you have a question, just type it in and we'll get to you.
Okay, great. So, yeah, and when we were talking about some of those visual things come into effect for a lot of our guys. This was a system that was used with my own child years ago when we had a My Way condition to kind of let him know when I was going to ask him any questions, but we also had or to do any tasks. And then we had a free time condition to let him know he's good, like he can do whatever he wants. And we always had to pair that My Way condition with more reinforcement, right? So when you have on this orange shirt and you're playing teacher, you also need to remember that if there are reinforcers that are used at school, that there might need to not only just be reinforcers that are used at home, but they may even have to be different or bigger or more, because you're getting over that hurdle of having to help, or to work with your child. So a little bit different that way. And one of the things that came up as well as we were talking with some of the parents about a concern that they had was just that now their child was being asked to write way more than they had been asked to do in the past. And I think many of us know that children on the spectrum and other children just have this fine motor issue, of not really having great writing skills, maybe really being concerned that they need to, not only when they do write, but that everything they write has to be perfect. They can't get the R wrong. They can't get something else wrong. They do a lot of erasing and kind of getting back to whatever it is. Maybe there's just a way for us to do the work a little bit differently. And would this possibly mean that you would have to review the work ahead of time? Yes. So I get it that maybe everybody doesn't have that opportunity. I would hope that our teachers are sending us home the answer keys to what it is, because not many of us could maybe win. Are you smarter than a fifth grader? And a lot of people have been bumped off that show very early. So with some second and third grade questions. And so we do need the answer keys. We don't remember everything. We also don't want mom and dad getting the answer wrong and then having somebody say, well, see, it's really not that important because even you don't know it. And, and you're an adult, right? So we want to make sure that we make the work appear certainly to be as important as it should be. But that might mean just writing answers out on an index card and putting them out in front of the child and asking them to pick which one, versus asking them to write it out, or just writing out the answers and just asking them to X one out or circle one or do something. So we may just have to present information that doesn't require as much handwriting because of that fine motor challenge that your child may have, or even just because of that that perfection, stance that they've taken on some things, and the anxiety that not getting it right may cause them if they haven't made something perfect, and a lot of that erasing, giving them the answers already written out can be much better. So another idea would be just presenting the work differently. Let them teach you. Can they be in the position of being the teacher and show you the work? So if you had said to them, show me, or tell me what the answer is, or show me, teach me this math problem. I want you to teach me to do something. They may really shine in that position.
Right.
I know for a fact that a lot of the children that I work with like to tell me what they know, right? They like to tell me about Minecraft, right? They like to tell me about all the things that they know how to do. Show me what it is that you know about science. Show me what it is that you know about something, and teach it to me, and play the teacher. And if you, or have the luxury of having a whiteboard up or something, let them actually be in that position of being the teacher for a little bit to show you what they know, and just to kind of stay in the mode of working with our children, or working or getting something done, right? And then before we get to this particular slide about IEP goals, the other thing I want to say to folks is, I know some of us who have children maybe even younger than 3 and excuse me, and aren't in school yet, and they were getting early intervention services, then may have said that they didn't want to do telehealth with their therapist or with their team. And my daughter actually had said this to me the other day, that she was going to do parent training, but she didn't think that doing telehealth with her child would be beneficial. And I really want you to understand that just seeing the faces of the people that they used to see every day is important to them. Just knowing that they didn't fall off the face of the earth, so even if the session is their therapist is going to come on and sing Itsy Bitsy Spider and then go off, it doesn't matter, but you want to keep them in that routine of seeing the face, and then maybe even getting an opportunity for them to, touch their nose or say hi or do whatever it is while they're engaging with them on, a Skype or a FaceTime or whatever. Because by losing out on seeing them, that's a big problem that they might have when they have to go back into services, or when they return to coming into your home. It's like, wait a minute, you've been gone for a month. Where were you? And now that pairing process has to start over again, which I know we're all prepared for, but it might be decreased a little bit if they could just see them every day and do something with them. So although you may not think it's beneficial, it really could just be singing a song and being done, or talking about the calendar and being done, but to keep them in their worlds, would be really important. And if possible, if they could sign up with friends and do a GoToMeeting or something like that, where they could see each other, to just let them know that their friends are okay, that they're still around, and that they can see them and say hi to them, and that sort of thing. So it's important. It's also important to keep them saying hi to each other, right? And just keeping up that social skill altogether is really important.
Yeah, it's kind of traumatic too to lose your friends in that way, and not know what's and the people that and really not knowing when you're going to see them again, or
Right.
what's happening.
Right. So so we're focused on, hey, we have to hunker down because we have this virus. We have to do this because this, but we're forgetting that they're not knowing that other people are doing the same thing, right?
Yeah.
When you're 3 years old and you're typical, and you think everything that happens inside your house, is kind of like happening to everybody else, but you don't necessarily know that, so if you can see them, and you can see that it's happening, then that would be great. And for some of our children who aren't neurotypical, this could really cause a lot of anxiety. Like, where did they go? What happened to them? But they don't necessarily have the language to say that. Right. So if they had the language, we could say, hey, they're doing the same thing as us and they're fine, and whatever it is. But if they don't have the language to even ask, how can we tell them they're fine?
Right.
We can't. And that's I think is a challenge. And then something that has been coming up for many of you who've been, coming to the meetings and talking to us, is just this issue of, really finding out maybe that your child doesn't know what you thought they knew or doesn't know it as well as you thought, if your school said that they were able to do something and now this work is coming home and they're not, then really looking at your current situation and saying, yeah, we might want to address this differently again. They're not generalizing this to the home setting. They're not using this information where it's valid. Look, the whole virus thing and washing your hands and staying safe is certainly a health and a science lesson that I'm sure many of our older kids have learned, but have they really learned it? Just because they can do the worksheet or read the thing and take the test doesn't mean that they're putting it into effect. And so can we really show them what that means and how to generalize that skill to apply things that they've been learning? And that would be really important. And then the other one that I think is crucial that I'm a huge advocate of, and that is leisure skills, teaching our children leisure skills that don't require multiple people and that can keep them also away from electronics. And the big reason that I bring it up now is I am very thankful that although this is the coronavirus and although this has been very challenging, that I still have internet access. But the last time something like this happened, we were at Superstorm Sandy and we were out of internet access and had some very, very anxious and upset children. And that to me was really important, that if we could teach our children some skills that they can use away from electronics, this can also help some family members now to just have their children engage in more than just, iPad. And unfortunately, sometimes iPad behavior only reinforces more iPad behavior, right? So it just kind of becomes almost an obsessive way for some of our children and becomes a challenge to take it away from them and until the battery dies or until something like that happens. But really teaching them some other skills so that we can try and almost try to take them away from that, but without punishing them too much. So if I can go from the iPad to an activity that's a little still preferred leisure activity, and then go to a work situation, and I can kind of, downgrade the level of reinforcement that the child is in, and to get to that point of being able to work with them, as opposed to taking them off of the iPad and saying, okay, you've had enough of that. Now come sit down and do this with me. It would be nice to kind of back it out if we had some other things like, hey, why don't you come play a game of Uno with me? Or why don't we do something, and back out some of their skills that way would be a really, I think, quite beneficial. Right. I'm not sure if there's any questions, but I know that we're going to try and do this, right?
Yep, we're going to do this Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday. And if you do have questions, you can type them in now, as we mentioned. But also, you can email us at info@poac.net. If you've got other topics, other questions that you'd like to see Bobby address for the full 20 minutes, half an hour, send that to us, and we'll be glad to discuss. And if you visit our website now, poac.net, and you click on the events tab, you'll see a whole bunch of online things that we have lined up for the upcoming weeks. We're going to be doing a weekly music program. We're going to be doing a weekly yoga program where we have a support group that's going to be online, and a bunch of other things that we're going to be putting in. So please visit us, poac.net, click on the events tab. For those of you that have been asking, we are still going to have our walkathons. We may not have them scheduled the way we have now. We'll probably have to reschedule some of those. And also our bigger events that you guys are really looking forward to, like the Easter egg hunt. We will still have it. We won't have it on Easter, but we will still have it at some point. So please visit us for all of that information, like I said, in the events tab, and email us and let us know what your questions are. And I don't see any comments, so I guess we can end for today. And thank you so much. I hope you guys got something out of this. I hope the noise isn't too much for you. I hope it's not coming across here. And we will see you again tomorrow at noon.
Okay. See you then.
Thanks. Bye. Bye.